In 2000, you became Vice President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. In 2001, you founded the United National Movement, and following the Rose Revolution, you became President of Georgia in January 2004. You have twice addressed our Assembly at its sessions before, in Paris in 2006 and in Valencia in 2008. We are delighted to have you back again to speak to us. Mr. President, as you know, a delegation from our Assembly observed the parliamentary elections in Georgia of the 1st of October. These elections, and I think I speak on behalf of you all, were an important step in consolidating Georgia's democratic achievements. They marked the first peaceful transfer of power since the Rose Revolution. The fact that power could change peacefully is further evidence that the Rose Revolution was successful. Our Assembly looks forward to working with the new Georgian Parliament and together with them, and of course with you, Mr. President, we will continue to support your country's path towards NATO membership. Mr. President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President Lammers. Dear friends, I'm extremely thrilled to be here. I know I've established a record by the fact that no other heads of state had spoken 3 times to this assembly. What can I say? Well, certainly thrilled, but I remember that we had this thing with our Minister of European Integration, who was pushing every time, like a few years ago, to go and to speak to NATO Secretary General, the previous one, in Brussels, who was a good friend, Jaap de Hoofdscheffer, and he wrote him a letter saying that such frequent visits of your Minister of European Integration to Brussels are not terribly helpful to the cause of Georgia's integration in NATO. So when I saw him next time, it was in New York at the UN General Assembly, and he said, "By the way, did you get my letter?" I said, "Yes." And what's your response? And I said, "Well, until you accept us as full NATO members, he will come to Brussels every week." So please don't see my presence here, although it's the 3rd time, as a sign that I'm pushing too much, although we are pushing too much, obviously. But it's also a sign that I've been president for already many years. It is an immense pleasure and honor and privilege to address you today. I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Secretary General Rasmussen, to you, Mr. President, to all of you distinguished representatives of a family of nations we earned to join, for allowing me to make the case for the transatlantic aspiration of the Georgian people. In fact, making this case has been and will remain the true and most profound leitmotif of my entire life. From the very beginning, in the darkness of the early 90s, when our country was ravaged by corruption and violence, when our capital had no electricity, and when our only real institution was organized crime, my involvement in politics was inspired by a simple idea: the idea that Georgia should and could join the family of Western democracies, that Georgia should and could one day become a member of North Atlantic Treaty Organization and of the European Union. Back then, some called this idea an illusion, but we have gone a long way since the darkness of the 90s, and what was unrealistic 20 or even 10 years ago has become quite close today. Throughout all these years, every single action and decision of mine, right or wrong, good or bad, was informed by this unyielding ambition for the Georgian people to go where they belong, to the West. It inspired the judicial reform I tried to initiate as minister during the government of President Shevardnadze. It led to the Rose Revolution. It fueled every single change of government has implemented since 2004. Reformist leaders in the post-Soviet world sometimes feel like sailors on a long, difficult journey in an ocean of troubles. As we sought to navigate these troubled waters, NATO as well as EU membership was like a pole star guiding the way for all the members of our idealistic team. NATO and EU are, ladies and gentlemen, the quintessence of what we call transformative foreign policy goals. I cannot see any equivalent of them in today's world. And today, just weeks after free and fair elections that brought to power a new parliamentary majority and then new government, just as our team of reformists lost the control of most of the executive and legislative powers, I come to you as a president of cohabitation, as a political leader affiliated with an opposition party, and more important, as a simple citizen of a nation that strives for freedom, to share my deep conviction that my country is more ready than ever to fulfill its NATO ambition. Ladies and gentlemen, in Georgia, NATO is neither a partisan issue nor just a simple foreign policy objective. Our NATO aspiration is an integral part of the identity of the nature of the new state we have built over the last decade. It is the cornerstone of our democracy, the bedrock of values of which we have erected our most important institutions. And the support for our integration into transatlantic alliance goes well beyond any political, religious, and social dividing lines. Unlike in some other countries, there is no rift in Georgia whether Georgia should go to the West, whether we should go to NATO, whether we should go to the European alliance. Union. There is no structure and powerful part of our society that openly opposes the integration process. There is no mainstream political force publicly advocating a reversal of our Euro-Atlantic path. And that really helped us to do reforms in previous years. According to the European Union, for all the reforms we've done for the last 8 years, Georgia is the least corrupt country of Europe. We were one of the most corrupt in the beginning. Georgia was maybe the most criminalized country of Europe. According again to the European Union, for the last 3 years, we are the safest country in Europe. The World Bank has this World Bank doing business list. For the first time ever, a developing country has made it to being among top 10. Georgia is number 9 on the World Bank list of doing business. So for a small country, these are important benchmarks. Poverty in Georgia for the last 8 years has decreased 2.5 times. We started to introduce step-by-step universal health coverage, and we had 150 new hospitals built. It's a big thing for modern hospitals for a country of less than 5 million people. And these were also because we have this ideology that we are going the right way, and this is the way to take, and it is the path which is in our genes as Georgian citizens. It is defining not only what we want, but who we are. Throughout a very long, difficult history, our nation has always tilted towards the Western world, striving to integrate itself into the European family of nations. It was a both matter of survival against the existential threats coming from the powerful Eastern, Southern, Northern empires, and the question of common values. All I speak, no mainstream force in Georgia dares to openly oppose NATO and EU membership, quite simply because Georgian voters would reject anybody announcing the intention to reverse the Euro-Atlantic path. Georgians have voted for NATO integration by landslide in a referendum in 2008, and they have repeated their commitment to it at every stage, through every test and every single turning point of their recent history. The United Nations movement, the party that led the Euro-Atlantic transformation of our country, is now in minority in the parliament. But the results of the last election should not lead to any pause in our integration process. On the contrary, by providing that the transfer of power now takes place through free and fair elections and no longer through revolutions of coups, by making clear that our new state institutions do not belong to any political force, but to the nation as a whole, by proving to all political parties and to the world that the Georgian people will hold any government accountable, that they consider themselves as sovereigns of their collective fate. By doing all of this, Georgia has demonstrated in the last month the maturity of its democracy, underscored the tremendous progress made over the past 9 years, and reaffirmed its readiness to embrace the high standards that define open and advanced societies gathered in the alliance and represented by you in this hall. I would like to take a moment to offer special thanks to those who came to monitor our elections. To all of you who came for all these years to Georgia to witness our progress, from basic real oblivion to what we are now, to a modern, fast developing country. As a vast army of highly paid lobbyists toured the world arguing that our elections already had been rigged and that my team would never accept any other results than a landslide victory, your presence on the ground was decisive. You were able to testify firsthand about the progress that has been made by our state and democracy. For those of you who are used to monitoring electoral processes in other countries, Georgia is no longer the same league, with all due respect to the others, than other countries in the region. The role of monitoring of elections was crucial, but your vigilance now is important as ever and ever. In coming months and years will be even more vital to the health of our young democracy. To hold free and fair election is difficult in a place where there is no tradition, but it's doable. But the main test of democracy is not whether you can have one elections, but you can have another elections after that one elections. And that's the main thing. And that's the main test right now, whether Georgia will be full-fledged long-term democracy. We'll need your watchful eyes and your storehouse of knowledge to help ensure that Georgia stays on the right path, that our institutions continue to serve Georgian citizens and are not hijacked or privatized by this marriage of an amazingly huge amount of money and power. And that our judiciary is used to protect our laws and not to extract political retribution, that the rights of ethnic, religious, and other minorities are respected. Our journey towards the alliance is not over. More reforms are needed. First of all, we must overcome the winner-takes-all mentality that is a very unfortunate characteristic of young democracies with short institutional memory. We should all understand that the long-term continuity of state matters more than any short-term political game, that institutions stand above and under political process, parties or social groups, that democracy means not only elections, as I said, but scrupulous respect for constitution and for the rights of minorities, that public institutions must never be used for private gains, and that witch hunts are not a suitable response to the people's demand for better social services and more inclusive politics. We must continue to strengthen the independent media and judiciary, two essential pillars of open society that we have built. We must continue to enhance civil society capacity to control and oversee state institutions. I'm very grateful for Secretary General that when he mentioned Georgia as a developed, mature democracy. Well, we are not there yet. But we want to keep where we are and to develop it further. We must pursue the decentralization of power that we have initiated recently, giving much more legitimacy and greater power to local government. We must do all of this and much more. But the Georgian nation already has cleared so many hurdles and improved in so many ways. Our people are ready. They behave like their peers in the European democracies, expecting the same accountability, transparency, and consideration from the government in any NATO member countries. The Georgian people are ready, and they will impose their will on the political forces. I'm absolutely confident in this, and ensure that the path is pursued and the final goal is attained. Ladies and gentlemen, in Bucharest, Georgia received a promise of membership in the alliance. Since then, a fiercely determined, gradual process leads to the ultimate outcome, the full membership. Many of our friends have stressed, and rightly so, the importance of the October 1 elections as a litmus test for our democracy. Again, Secretary General today said that we passed that litmus test. We had free and fair elections, and now it's time to see new concrete steps towards the fulfillment of the Bucharest statement, because we also had smooth transfer of power, new tangible steps towards our membership in the alliance. In the last 10 years, the Georgian people have overcome many obstacles. Threats, pressures, embargoes, bombings, invasions, occupations, terrorist attacks. Nothing could deter them or weaken their commitment. The Russian Prime Minister Medvedev said a few months ago that with the 2008 war, Russia has managed to stop the enlargement of the alliance. By saying that, he clearly stated one of the main goals of the 2008 invasions, but he also overestimated the results of it. Because since then, my people have proven to be resilient and so committed to the alliance that our integration process only gained its intensity. In a hostile context, Georgia is the highest non-NATO contributor to the ISAF. The participation is based on our national security interests, but also stands as a proof of our commitment to the alliance. We are reliable partners, and we want to take our share. Ladies and gentlemen, during all these years, Georgia has become a laboratory for the region, a test case too. A test whether or not democracy can grow in the former Soviet Union, whether or not our transatlantic path can succeed. If the Georgian way succeeds, then the whole region will be transformed and changed. If not, it's a strategic area that might be shut down for a long period, because Georgia is like a bottleneck in a very sensitive place. I come here to make the case for the Georgian aspirations to join the alliance, but broadly for the enlargement of NATO in general. We are commemorating 10th anniversary of the 2002 Prague Summit, the largest ever enlargement summit in history of alliance, as a result of which 7 members for the former communist Europe have joined. Well, we missed that train. We weren't in time that moment, but we don't want to miss the train when it departs next time from the same station. 10 years ago, it brought more stability, more security, and more democracy to the European continent. It has shown to the world that NATO enlargement is not a negative but a positive agenda. It is not directed against anybody or destabilizing anyone. It's just shaping in ways bigger space of shared values and common peaceful practices, something that is everybody's long-term interest, even those who do not seem to understand this as I speak. Ladies and gentlemen, finally I would like to comment the fact that you are not just commemorating this glorious path, but instead looking forward to the future by inviting our 4 aspirant nations to celebrate this event together with member states. These 4 countries are different by their history and their trajectory. But what unites us in the same faith is in the alliance, future, and identically strong determination to defend and to promote principles it stands for. The formalization of this so-called group of aspirant countries has become a major achievement of the recent Chicago summit. To put it really very frankly, every time I go to these summits with certain degree of fear. Because if there is no progress and there is a reversal, then it sends wrong message. And Chicago summit was against all my fears, was very much straightforward on those issues. And that's why we are very grateful they did it. We will walk, and by the way, also at Chicago it said that 2014 will be enlargement summit. And Georgia was mentioned in her speech by Hillary Clinton, as well as by many other dignitaries, as strong candidate for the next wave of enlargement. We will walk together towards the next summit, confident that the enlargement agenda is not over. My dear friends, the goal of Europe, Holland free, is still ahead of us. History did not come to an end. And despite all ups and downs, also we might have in our own nation, in the end, its trajectory is very clear as always, and alliance is needed more than ever, as well as its enlargement. Thank you so much for your attention.